You ever get a weird feeling in your gut? The vibe is off. There's a pit in your stomach. You suddenly don't want to go, but you don't want to be dramatic or rude or, God forbid, miss out on the fun. You ignore the warning signs, then you end up saying, I should have stayed my ass at home. Remember, intuition is a primal survival tool. This is Sorry, Death is Calling. Oh my God, my neighbor is like literally calling. Okay, I'm not going to answer. Sorry, Chandra. Okay, so let's talk about your gut. That feeling, the sudden skin prickling sense that something's wrong. You're walking to your car, everything's quiet, and suddenly your whole body just tightens. Your brain goes, nothing's happening, but your gut says, run. That's intuition, and it's actually backed by science. Intuition is defined as the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. Psychologists say intuition is our brain processing information faster than we can consciously explain. It notices patterns, red flags, environmental cues, and even body language. But here's the catch. We are trained as society to ignore it, especially women. From a young age, we're told to be polite, to be agreeable, don't make a scene, don't be rude. So when your gut is screaming that the Uber driver is giving you a weird vibe, or the party feels off, or the guy offering to help you with your groceries is just a little too enthusiastic, what do? You smile, you say thank you tell yourself you're just being dramatic, and you, like a lot of women, worry about being wrong more than being unsafe. Let that sink in. We'd rather be murdered politely than make someone feel uncomfortable. Sometimes the fear of being rude drowns out the part of us that's trying to keep us alive. Okay, so while I was researching this episode, I started to wonder if, before World War II broke out, if Jewish women felt like something was off, like if, there had to have been women whose intuition was just screaming, right? So I researched it and I found that years before World War II, many women were more attuned to the growing hostility in their communities, noticing the shift in neighbors' attitudes, the tone in local media, or the early violence in the streets. They urged their husbands to flee, but were often told they were overreacting or being hysterical. Husbands wanted to stay for financial reasons. In many cases, men were established in their professions, doctors, lawyers, business owners, and felt confident in their social standing, military service, or patriotism. And they thought that would protect them. They believed the situation would blow over. Women's intuition has been screaming throughout history, and too often we have been called hysterical. And sometimes not listening to your gut can cost entire families their lives. I would argue that not listening to women can also cost entire families their lives. Okay, I gotta take a little. Oh my God, I'm so hungover. Okay. So the reason why I titled this, Sorry, It's Death Calling, is because of this story right here. Joey Comunale. 26-year-old Joey Comunale was in bed in his Connecticut home when he decided to go to a party in New York City's meatpacking district. He got out of bed and left his house for the last time. That night, he went to an after-hours party at Jimmy Rackover's posh Sutton Place apartment. Joey was brutally beaten and stabbed 15 times in the chest and 9 times on the right side, 6 times on the left. After attempting to dismember him in a bathtub with a kitchen knife, Joey's body was wrapped in plastic and a comforter, then tossed onto a busy Manhattan sidewalk. His murderer packed him into his trunk and drove him to Oceanport, New Jersey, where his body was set on fire and buried in a shallow grave. His body was found 3 days later. James Rackover was found guilty in 2018 for Joey's murder. This is why we don't get FOMO. The story is like so crazy because Jimmy Rackover was not born Jimmy Rackover. Jimmy Rackover was born in Florida to a single mother and grew up very poor, and then decided that wasn't his life. So he moved to New York City and was adopted by the jeweler to the stars, and who designed Melania's engagement ring. That was me throwing up for our audio only listeners. He's never given a reason why this happened. Could have been like a dick measuring contest because they were all kind of gym bros. No one knows. And before this night, Joey had not met him before. Like, they were strangers. So there's no motive. He just got out of his bed one night because he wanted, a friend of his was like, come party. And then he was murdered. If you are in bed, don't get out like that. And if you are already in bed, stay in bed, because if you get out of bed, like, it's death calling. Have I ever what? Oh yeah, I got roofied that night. Okay, so when I first moved to Austin, I had a neighbor who I just had very weird feelings about. Very weird feelings about. And one night I went out with a bunch of friends and I drove my car because I wasn't going to drink, because I wanted to drive my car back home and sleep in my own bed that night. So I drove to my friend's house. When I walked into his apartment, that guy who I had a bad feeling about was there. And I was like, fuck. And I should have gone home because my gut was screaming, like, go home, go home, go home. You shouldn't have gotten out of bed. You should have stayed your ass at home. But I was like, I'm surrounded by all of my friends. What could happen? And so I go out with them. And again, I'm not drinking. I'm drinking cranberry juice all night. That's it. Everywhere we go. Sometimes I'd be like cranberry juice and like a squirt of Sprite. So it kind of looked like I was drinking. And then I think our third bar, I looked at my friend Robbie and I said, I feel weird. I feel really weird. I was like, I think I'm losing motor skills. You need to like call. And he was like, how many fingers am I holding up? And I'm like, you need to call me an Uber. So he took my phone, called me an Uber on it, and they walked me down the stairs. And by this point, like, I'm fully losing motor skills, like fully, like they're having to like take me down. I'm sober. So I know that I was drunk. Like, I know I was. They put me in the passenger seat of the Uber, and the guy who I'd had weird feelings about jumped in the back seat. And he was like, I'm her neighbor, so I'm going to get her home. And the Uber driver was like, buddy, I've got her address in the, thing. Like, I can, it's fine. And he's like, no, I'm going home anyways. Like, and we're at the same place, so we'll just share an Uber. And the whole time I have my head against the window and I'm trying to like look at the driver, like, like trying with all of my might to be like, hello, like, don't fucking trust this guy. And he, like, stalker, grabs my phone out of my lap. He like reaches across, grabs my phone out of my lap, texts the guy who I was seeing at that time, like, I don't want to see you anymore, which honestly, like, thank you, because I wanted to do that anyways. And then texted all of our friends that night, got home safe, threw my phone back in my lap. I had also blocked his phone number on my phone, and he unblocked his phone number on my phone. Yeah. So we drive to the hill country. We get to my apartment. We stop at the gate. And the Uber driver goes, hey, man, I'm going to let you out here. And the neighbor was like, no. I'm literally her next door neighbor. He wasn't. He didn't even live in the same building. He was a couple buildings away. And the guy goes, hey, if you really live here, you'll know the password to that gate. Hop out. And he kept saying like, no, I'm not. And the guy was like, man, I'm not arguing with you. Get the fuck out of my car. Go. And I was like, thank God. And the Uber driver like knew. He knew that and I wish I knew his name and I wish I knew like this guy because I would literally send him a Christmas present every year. Um, he gets to my apartment building, he helps me out of the car, and the whole time too, I'm thinking like, this better be a good fucking guy. Like this better be not someone trying to like, you know? He helps me open my apartment door, pushes me inside to the floor. So I'm like, fuck, it's happening. And I fall to the floor. He shuts the door and he was like, I need to hear it lock. I need to hear the click. Please, 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 please get up and lock this door. Click, And I'm like, okay. So I like go with all my might, lock the door, and he was like, okay, and walks away and got into his car. And he's and, like, I could hear it kind of like idling. Like he sat there for a little bit and then left. And I think he was waiting to see if like that neighbor. Before I had moved in, my roommate, who was prior friends with this guy, because she had lived at this apartment complex before, so they were friends. He installed our washer and dryer, and she gave him a key so that he could get in while she was at work. He went and made a copy of that key. So he had a key to our place. Luckily, nothing happened that night, but there was another night I came home and he was naked in my bed. Yeah, he had let himself in and was naked in my bed. That's why I moved in with Zach. I had never lived with anybody. I had moved in with Zach because I was so freaked out. He knew my schedule. I had to stop going to the gym. It was bad. I was with mostly guys that night. And my one girlfriend, Ashley, who was in the bathroom at the time all of this was going down. And this is the biggest lesson for me. Like after that night, I never, ever went out with mostly guys ever again. Ever. My girlfriends would have never put me in an Uber and they would have never let a guy get in with me if, like, no matter who, they would have been like, I'm taking her home. I'm going with her. I'm very, very, very lucky that that did not end how that night was, I think, supposed to end for me. I should have stayed my ass in bed. Always listen to your gut. Because every time I would see him, like from the moment I met him, my hair would stand up on the back of my neck. Okay, I've got another story. In the early 1990s, a young, unnamed English backpacker was hitchhiking, like so many travelers did back then. A man in a pickup truck pulled over and offered her a ride. She said everything seemed fine at first. He was polite, smiling, chatty, totally normal. But as she stood by the passenger door, ready to hop in, something shifted. She didn't know what it was exactly. Maybe the way he looked at her too long, maybe the way her chest tightened, but something felt cold, even though it was summer. Her body was screaming, "Don't get in the car," so she didn't. She stepped back, said no thanks, and walked away, completely unsure why, but she was so freaked out. Years later, the same man's photo showed up on the news. His name? Ivan Milat, one of Australia's most infamous serial killers, responsible for murdering at least 7 young backpackers in the forest, often after picking them up while they were hitchhiking. I think that listening to your gut also applies with friendships. Like there are just some people, like no matter what, you just kind of meet them and you're hanging out and you're like, yeah, I don't know. There's something about it. There's something about it. We had a listener submission of someone who said that they had started a podcast with a friend of theirs. And throughout the experience, she just kept getting this gut feeling like it just wasn't working. She was like, I don't know if I want to go into business with this person. And so she ended up quitting the podcast, but then she just like ghosted. And she was like, I probably didn't handle it the right way. And I'm like, honestly, sometimes ghosting is the way to go. Because I think too, the only reason to hash out or like talk about what's going on is if you want to have reconciliation with that person. But if you don't want to see that person again, like we don't have to talk about it. Let's just move on. Let's just go on about our lives and forget each other. I do have a really weird gut feeling right now, and I don't know what it is. And I've been trying to pinpoint it. I'm like, oh my God, is something electrical going on in my house? Is there a carbon monoxide leak? Are we going to war? Do I need to leave the country? Like, I don't know. It's just, and then my gut just sank when I saw those vans pull up to the concentration camp that they built in Florida. Like, it just made me physically ill. Talking to a friend, my friend Charles, who I met at the chateau at my writer's residency, and him and his husband live in LA, but they're moving to France. And they just got back from spending 5 weeks there looking for homes, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I just think we gotta go." I was like, "Damn." I was like, "Me too." But it sucks. Like, you build community. Like, I've got a community here. Like, I've got things going on. Like, I really love where I live. So to like up and leave, like, I don't want to do that. Like, I totally understand where people are coming from, where you're like, why didn't they leave when they saw the signs? And I'm like, fuck. Like, it is a confusing thing, like, because I am going to recognize my privilege in the fact that I am able to leave. And I recognize my privilege that the reason for me leaving is not because my life is in danger necessarily. Like, my reasoning to leave more so stands on the fact that, like, I'm not willing to give up the wealth I've accumulated over my adult years to this country, because that's what's going to happen. It's just getting more and more expensive to be here. Your taxes are going up, your property taxes are going up. Like, it's just getting more and more expensive to be here. Indiana is putting in toll roads. Indiana. If you are any part of the middle class, you should be very frightened about what's going to happen. I think if you're not a part of the 1%, you should be very worried financially. War is not good for the economy, for anybody, except for the very wealthy. It's very good for the very wealthy. I don't know how I'm feeling. You know how you're sitting on your front porch and you start to hear thunder rumbling off in the distance and you're like, damn, I better go inside. Like, it's going to storm. And you count the seconds. I don't know if this is just a Midwest and maybe you see lightning and you start counting the seconds to the thunder and you're like, that's how many miles the storm is out. The storm is getting closer. Hands on hips. Dad runs out on the front porch, puts his hands on his hips, watches it, squints. Do you know what, though? Women in the Midwest, the dad might go out and watch women. Maybe this is just me and the women in my family. Maybe this is just a Hoosier thing, but we walk out and sniff the air because I can smell a tornado coming. I was staying in Deerfield, Wisconsin with my in-laws on a summer night. Lydia was just a little baby infant. And I woke up, felt very weird. I was like, something's up. I walk outside. I'm not a horse person, but horses were, even I knew the horses were acting weird, you know? And I went, it's here. So I go inside. I said, Zach, we got to go to the basement. And he's like, chill. And I was like, I don't know if this podunk little town doesn't have little sirens or something. Let me go do it. Wee woo. Get downstairs. I smell a tornado. And he was like, you don't smell a tornado. I said, I smell a tornado. Finally, our phones beep, 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 tornado. So I said, go get your parents. His parents are like, all right, shit. So they all go downstairs and a tornado hit right outside Deerfield. I smelled that motherfucker. That is real intuition. I am very sensitive to smell. That's why pregnancy was not good for me. Zach couldn't even brush his teeth on the same floor as me when I was pregnant. Speaking of pregnant, one more story. When I was pregnant, this is listening to your gut. The whole time I was pregnant, I was like, something's up. I don't know. I feel weird. I'm very sick. I'm ill. And the doctor kept being like, you're just pregnant. You're just pregnant. And I'm like, what? Second trimester. I'm like, I'm still sick. Yeah, it'll change. It'll get better. It never got better the whole time. I was sick the whole time. And then I woke up. My cat pounced on me. I had been feeling weird for a couple of days. I was like, Zach, something's up. And it was during that damn snowstorm in Texas. And Zach's like, I really hope she's not coming early because this would be a horrible time to come. And I'm like, I'm telling you, something is wrong. Call my doctor. And she's like, you're probably just pissing your britches. I was like, no, I'm leaking. I've been leaking for days. I'm not slowly pissing for 3 days, dude. And she's like, well, I can't get to you. I'm stuck across the bridge. And I'm like, I don't necessarily know if I want your ass to deliver my child. You've kind of been a cunt. So anyway, so my cat wakes me up. I sit up, I feel a little gish, go to the bathroom. I'm like, Zach, you're going to have to sniff my vagina. I Googled it and it said that it might smell like almonds. And so he was like, it does smell a little sweet. It does kind of smell like it smell like an almond. And I'm like, well, shit. So I call the hospital. Hospital phone lines are just like not working. I get this nurse in California and she's like, hey, tell me what's going on. I said, my husband sniffed my vagina. I said it smelled like almonds and I've been leaking for 3 days. And she's like, baby, you need to go right now. And I had my daughter. I had like no fluid. I had no fluid left in me. She was just in there bouncing around dry as shit. Like I said at the beginning, a common theme is throughout history, women have been like, the birds have changed their flight pattern, and I've noticed that. And people are like, burn her at the stake. And then they burn her at the stake, and a hurricane happens. And then they go, damn, that witch sent a hurricane. But really, she was just trying to tell you a hurricane was coming, and you just didn't listen. Be sure to tune in next week. We are every Tuesday. And also follow us on social media. Fun!